Greetings one and all. Before I launch into my weekly monologue, I just want to give you a quick reminder to check out my patreon.com site. By joining up there, you show your support for the channel. It's as simple as that. And you get early access to all the new content, exclusive access to a question and answer video that we film every week that I'm particularly fond of. It's a great site, so come along, stir yourself into the mix, make it even better than it is. Okay, now it's time for this week's monologue. We're being played. Black, white and brown, Christian, Muslim, Jew, left, right, whatever. We're being played like the proverbial Stradivarius, and it's working a treat and there's no denying it. Sectarian loathing is being stoked all over. Whatever side you're on, you can't fail to see how it feels orchestrated. The machetes flash in the light of flames. The sound of breaking glass is all over the place in towns and cities. But your nerves are frayed, anxiety builds. But worst of all is the way we're being played by those who benefit, who always benefit. Where there's chaos, there's brass. As is the case in relation to so much else, we must always ask who benefits, because when events unfold like they're unfolding now, as peace feels like it's receding in the rearview mirror and conflict looms closer ahead, we surely owe it to ourselves and to our children to ask who benefits from a mess like this. No reasonable person could deny that there's rising anger and fear as a consequence of the way change was forced upon these islands against the will of most of the people living there at the time. No reasonable person could look at how the demographics of Britain have been deliberately altered since the turn of the millennium, since 2001, and claim that there's no case to answer, that there's nothing to talk about. Whatever dog you have in the fight, whatever side you're on, it's been momentous change in this part of the world, and you've got to confront it and talk about it. As I say, as recently as 2001, these islands were 90% white. Now, you can consider that to have been a good thing or a bad thing. It makes no difference. It's a fact. 2001, 23 years ago. And Britain is not and never has been a country of immigrants. The USA, the United States of America, is entirely different in that regard. But Britain had never been the destination of the world's poor and huddled masses, not in any significant numbers. Britain, like many places, taken in a steady flow, people from the former whatever colonies and yada yada yada. People have come, but not in significant numbers that altered anything demographically. People came and went, but it's also politically charged, isn't it? What word to use? The Indigenous stock for the longest time remained the same for millennia. I speak from an archaeological perspective there. For the longest time, the dominant DNA of Britain was that had been inherited from the hunters who walked into this part of the world several thousand years ago. My mitochondrial DNA, that which I inherited from my mother, has been on the west coast of Scotland for 10,000 years, or whatever number you want to put on it, but a very, very long time. And that's true of most people in my growing up. But by now, and for the first time in its history, London, the capital city of the United Kingdom of Great Britain, is minority white. Fact. And if present trends continue, Britain itself will be minority white in our lifetimes. Now, that's quite a change. You can't realistically, soberly pretend that kind of change in such a short space of time won't have consequences. Love it or loathe it as a prospect, it makes no difference. It's demonstrable fact, and it's nothing short of remarkable. You viewed from up high and far away. I'm fairly sure that no nation on earth, short of conquest by invasion, has ever seen as much change in as short a period of time as has Britain. I've said it before and I'll say it again, that the Britain I grew up in has simply gone over the hill into history. You know, it's partly why I've written the recent books that I've written, because I'm reflecting on the fact that for my own sake and for nobody else's, I want to make a note of what I saw, you know, the land of my upbringing, and because it was changing, and that's not a value judgment. That's just an observation. Change. But the Britain I grew up in is gone and won't be coming back. And when I hear people insist differently, I think always of Trigger's broom in the legendary sitcom Only Fools and Horses, when Trigger, who's a character in the piece, and he's a street sweeper, and he's in the pub and he holds up his broom and he says it's the same one his grandfather used to sweep the streets. 7 new heads and 3 new handles, or whatever. But the same broom, he says and thinks. That's Britain's like Trigger's broom. There's nothing left of whatever was there when I was born. I say that's just a simple fact that during the second half of my lifetime, well, so far, one Britain's been replaced by another one. And you can say that's a good thing or say that's a bad thing, but it's just a fact. And change, especially rapid change, has consequences. It's infantile to pretend otherwise. It's unhelpfully sort of deaf, dumb and blind to not acknowledge that. You do what you want, but face the consequences. Every year, enough new people arrive in Britain to populate a city the size of Newcastle upon Tyne. So something between... I'm not talking here about illegal immigration here. I'm talking about the cumulative arrival. So you're looking at between 250,000 and 300,000 new people every year. And while that's going on, no new infrastructure, meaningfully, is being built or provided to cope. You look at the things you need for 300,000 new people. You need houses and more roads and bridges over roads and rivers and new schools and hospitals, whatever. None of it's been built, but the people are coming. Now that's not sustainable. Not unless you just want people living on the street in ever-increasing numbers. And another undeniable reality, therefore, is that we need to build several new castles already, because we're well behind, and that we will need, if things keep going the way they're going, we'll need to keep building the equivalent of one new Newcastle every year, just to give all the new people somewhere to live, and somewhere to go and get a doctor's appointment, and somewhere to go and have their children educated. One government after another, of the left, of the right, of the centre, has turned a blind eye to all of it. Or they've been deliberately driving it, one way or the other. People, the electorate have voted again and again, rightly or wrongly, to stop mass immigration, most notably in the form of the Brexit vote in 2016. And every time they're ignored. That sentiment, whether you approve of it or not, is ignored in every meaningful way. Politicians of all stripes make promises. It's also Theresa May, just to name but one, promising to stop net immigration or set it at such and such a figure. They don't. They just don't. They don't do anything about it. It's just a can and they kick it down the road. And it can't be denied. And so, I know I can hear the frustration in my voice. I feel as if I'm stating the blindingly obvious. So you get what we've got, which is more and more people angry. Like it or lump it. More and more people demanding a stop and or reversal, and increasing numbers. More and more people are saying that if the government won't act, then the people will, and the people are, or they will. That's also true, because it's in human nature. Eventually, push comes to shove, and no reasonable person, I would say, could witness all the rising anger and resentment and insist that those emotions don't matter. You can say the people are misguided or xenophobic or racist or whatever. You can use all those words if you want. I wouldn't. But you can't say those emotions don't matter. You can't bury it under the carpet. And I would say those emotions are not only completely understandable, they're predictable, completely predictable. What were they expecting to happen? They were predicted, of course they were, over and over again for decades, by people great and small, famous and infamous, who were without exception, shouted down and vilified as racists and far-right extremists. But nonetheless, the unrest was predicted. And it's also tragically and unforgivably obvious. And all the while, as the heat builds, and it is, and as the chaos seems to loom, and it does, we're being played. Groups, cliques, sects, cultures are set against one another by those who either don't care whether most of us live or die, or that stand to benefit from the chaos. So by now, we have, whatever the population numbers actually are in Britain, I'm not sure there's a trusted figure anymore, but let's say it's 80 million souls. For the sake of argument, 80 million people are effectively sat on top of a petrol-soaked bonfire of emotions, awaiting a spark. And I speak to people all the time, some of whom, frankly, an alarming number of whom, insist violent civil war is unavoidable now. It's only a matter of time. That it's the only way to settle the matter, in inverted commas. And I do not claim for one moment to be able to say those people are wrong in that prediction. I don't know. But what I do know is that I live here. I was born here, raised here, I'm raising my family here. My children live here. And I don't have any realistic option of moving my family somewhere else. And even if I did, I wouldn't know where to go. It's a global state of affairs all over the West. So given those my realistic circumstances, I would prefer it if the whole place didn't burn to the ground while me and mine are here. And some of those same people that I speak to say that the mix of people, they insist that the mix of people here now, in terms of religion, culture, is impossibly and intractably mutually antagonistic. That each is literally antithetical in relation to the others. The various groups that are all bumping shoulders now are inherently incompatible. It always will be. That's what I hear all the time. The oil and water, they can't mix. And that inevitably it's going to come down to some sort of knockdown fight, after which one group will stand dominant and all the others will be gone. Whatever you mean by gone. Now, what a prospect. Now, hopelessly combustible or not, the circumstances in which we find ourselves, they've been foisted upon us, to put it mildly, by those that are playing us like that Stradivarius violin. I would say, as the heat rises, they're laughing at us. Those violinists back all sides in the fight anyway. So whatever happens and whomever wins, they profit and see their positions strengthened. Increased censorship's inevitable. That's a fact of my daily life. Whatever you or I might think of, say, Elon Musk, whatever you think of his motivations, one way or the other, his allegiances, real or imagined, his online platform X, the platform formerly known as Twitter, is, it's firmly in the sights of those who want to silence the chattering classes once and for all. And maybe Elon Musk is just a patsy playing his appointed part in it all, or maybe acts in good faith. I don't know. But, Twitter seems to be under attack. I suspect in the end it'll all come down to one thing, which is money. Isn't it always? We are certainly being played by those who in private, in secrecy, unelected and unaccountable, control the creation and the flow of money. And that's a fact. Fiat money, the currency we spend every day, the debt that we carry every day, is a product of and is entirely controlled by private entities that we don't have any influence over. We don't elect them in, we can't elect them out, we don't know what decisions they're making or why, we don't know who they are. But the creation and the flow of money is in private, secretive hands. Look it up. So it means that whatever you think of Biden or Putin or Netanyahu or Zelensky or XiJinping or Starmer or Macron or Scholz or von der Leyen, whatever you think of those that we're invited to imagine are, they're some of them are allies, or some of them are at each other's throats. It's also absolute fact that all of the central banks of all of those nations take their instructions from the same place. Now, that might sound unbelievable, but they all take their instructions from the Bank for International Settlements in Switzerland. Strangely set aside, never invaded, never messed with Switzerland. Consider for a moment that about the Bank for International Settlements. That, while we're invited to speculate about whether the US or Russia or China will achieve global dominance, the unelected, unaccountable, diplomatically immune men and women of the Bank for International Settlements, in private and in secret, and with no requirement to publish reports of what they're up to, make the financial decisions of all of the above countries, and most of the rest of the world's central banks besides. Ask your MP about the Bank for International Settlements, and I'll be surprised if he or she has even heard of it. And even if they have, I'll be blown away if that person could tell you much of anything about what the Bank for International Settlement does, or why it has the influence that it does. As the late, great US comedian George Carlin memorably pointed out, it's one big club and you ain't in it. Agree with me or don't, but I stand by the thought that what we're dealing with, experiencing directly, is the product of deliberate policies, and that's important. It's not accidental. These are the products of policy decisions made by whomever, all around the world for decades. One place after another has been destabilised. Invasion, bombing, regime change. One place after another has been destabilised, reduced to smoking ruins, and its population thereby uprooted and set on the long march, or big proportions of it anyway. And that's the migration. That's the march of people from somewhere to elsewhere. And there is no denying that all of the upheaval is making millions, if not billions, of people unhappy. And I say it's similarly undeniable that those same consequences are making others, a psychopathic, parasitic few people, very happy indeed. And so I say again, whatever is happening in the mad world, whatever side you're on, if you're on a side, or if you're on no side at all, whatever is happening or is about to happen here in the UK, whatever is happening, if you stop for a moment and listen carefully, you can't help but hear, above the flames of burning empires, the sound of violins.